Alaska, August the 15th, a meeting with Trump and Putin, and the aborted one in Budapest on the 28th of October, neither yielded any willingness on the part of Moscow really to talk. Because scratch, and you always wheel him out. It's almost, he is always the hard man. You get Lavrov saying, "Oh, we must get back to the root causes," which is virtually the surrender of Ukraine. And the trouble is that while you get people saying that that we must have peace at all costs, the surrender of Ukraine delivers you into this confrontation, this very serious strategic crisis for NATO of these enormous armed camps. And where does that go? And this is where America comes into it, because I think opinion is certainly shifting. And I think the Trump view, oh, we could go away and let anything happen, has gone, because the American strategic advisors, they're completely consistent, very much on the case, saying, well, Europe is our Atlantic shield. We absolutely need it. We can't let Europe go down. And so there's a lot of, I think, quite hasty rethinking going on, but that they must. I think they have to be more prepared to be prepared far quicker than they realised. That the timetable is very short, because things could get very, very desperate, I think, by the spring. Supposing, for instance, the enclave on the Baltic, Kaliningrad, is under threat, and there's some question as of tonight over that, whether it could be cut off. Look, the Russian Navy really isn't performing too well at all, and that must be a concern. So, as I think you and I have said over and over again, is that Putin has got to find a way to shut this off. But on the other hand, that they're saying that that he only lives and dies now in politics, in power, by keeping the war going. So he is caught, and I think that's where it is. But the one thing that one has to say for people like Trump and Rubio and Witkoff and Mark Rutte, they haven't found an off ramp for Russia to get into Russia to say, no, look, let's talk seriously about it. Because the worrying thing about the state of Putin's rhetoric, if not his state of mind, was what he said when he was launching a Skyfall and Neptune, and was saying, "Oh, this could we're just showing." They were saying we could wipe out the whole of the United States if we wanted to, which is absolutely shows that you're not thinking constructively at all, because that means you go as well. We're in a very, very strange place right now.
Indeed, and yet there's still this hesitancy on the part of the US. I mean, Tomahawk is not again going to be given to Ukraine. We did see those further sanctions, so some sort of shift in position. But are sanctions a bit toothless without that kind of military support for Ukraine as well, or will they still have an effect?
I think it's very interesting, and I think there's real concern about the inconsistency of Trump's stance and the sort of wild, off-piste element of his security and foreign policy, namely Venezuela and Nigeria lately. Suddenly said, we'll do this. I mean, what is he up to? And then you get Putin's people saying, we'll put Oreshnik, the super-duper ballistic missile, into that. What? What does that do? And it shows you that they're reading from a very bad old B movie script. They think it's the Cuban crisis all over again. And there is great concern about the distraction, not destruction, of the Trump security apparatus. So, answering your Tomahawk point, you can see that Britain and Germany have just announced, and they will have to accelerate, they're going to do an intermediate missile themselves for Ukraine. And I'm sure they will, and I'm sure they can get it there by the spring. We know there's tremendous effort by Denmark, and Denmark and now Norway are going to build in and around. they've got to keep the air war going, because particularly around in the tactical battle around Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, is that this is where Russia does seem to be getting some air dominance over the drone units. They're deliberately targeting the drone units. So, as usual, with this kind of tactical war, it's evolution, or it's a bit like a game of chess, or the move of the knight: 2 steps forward, 1 to the side, 2 steps forward, 1 back. And this seems to be what's going on. But the big announcement as the summer offensive was getting underway from Putin, that it's sort of almost Napoleonic in his boast. Napoleon is supposed to have said at Chaumont to Chancellor Metternich of Austria, "I have an income of 100,000 men." Putin said, "I have 170,000 troops to go into the Pokrovsk, Donbass offensive." Well, where are they? I'm sure they're around, but you couldn't deploy them. It'd just be a traffic jam. I mean, that sort of talk, if you sort of deconstruct it, is slightly crazy. And that's why I've made these apologies to you listeners, to be burbling a bit. I mean, we're in Rumsfeld territory, known knowns, known unknowns, and a hell of a lot of unknown unknowns. But the known unknowns, I think, are particularly interesting. There are things like, how damaging has the weakness in the harvest been? How damaged are they in not being able to get hydrocarbons out of the ground or onto the railroads or into the tankers? Are they really beating up the tanker fleet, which they seem to be at the moment? It's that everybody says, "Oh, the battle lines have hardly moved." The lines, the mental battle lines, are shifting very, very fast at the moment, and they're very mercurial and very volatile. So I think that we'll go into a winter, and I think it'll be a winter of slogging war. There will be no truce, and I think that Russia seems to be showing every sign of preparing an ambiguous approach on the Baltics and possibly the Balkans as well. The one thing that Putin does seem to be very keen to do at the moment is diversify, to spread the effort, to get as many on board. But he's not doing too well with allies. His immediate allies mistrust him. That even Belarus fears that an annexation could be on its way. And if it is on its way, Russia, even with, as I said, the 250,000, which I include internal troops, the security apparatus, they wouldn't be able to hold a fully occupied Belarus and Ukraine. In present circumstances, I don't think they could.
Indeed, and we were talking about where it is getting difficult on the front line for Ukraine. Pokrovsk, of course, is the big concentration point at the moment. It looks like it is about to fall entirely into Russia's hands. Putin will no doubt make a very big fanfare of this, but is the victory that big for Russia, given the time and the resources expended to take it? And can we expect this to lead to any sort of breakthrough that the Russians seem to allege it could, crack open the fortress belt?
Well, the whole operation has taken 21 months, which is an awful indictment of their planning and execution, given their numerical superiority. I don't know how they've arranged their defensives, and I think it's Highway 52 that they have to keep for their logistics. I know that they're making arrangements. The fear is, in the worst case of a collapse, that it would open a road going up the river line to Kiev. That looks less likely at the moment, particularly as the Russians are not doing so well elsewhere on other parts of the front.
You've been watching or listening to Frontline for Times Radio with me, Louis Sykes. For more on the war in Ukraine, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for a membership, or you can hear all the latest news and analysis on Times Radio or read it at thetimes.com. And remember, we are in both podcast and video form. You can find us on your favourite podcast platform. It's Times Radio's Frontline, or you can watch us on Times Radio's YouTube channel. Thanks very much. Goodbye.